Today I'm going to tell the story of a deer that I called Farmhouse. It was a deer I was able to harvest last year, and I'm kind of disappointed. I had another mistake, and it happens. It just seems to happen a little more to me than anybody else. But we called him Farmhouse. I had 3 pictures of this deer early season, and they were right behind the old farmhouse on the property that we're hunting, so I just called this buck Farmhouse because I really didn't have much other than that. I knew he was mature, judging by all the other pictures I have in the pasture area up there. I kind of had a feeling that he might have been the king of that area, and so I knew really early on in the fall that he might be kind of a harder deer to get on. He was probably the #1 target deer for sure, but I'm really setting my sights on #2. So for us, in the hunt for Farmhouse, it started out really slow. I'm not a huge, I like to hunt the first couple days, maybe the first 3 or 4 days of October. Our season opens October 1st, and those deer are still on that summer pattern. So I like to get in there and try to maybe get lucky and kill, that big deer that's still on summer pattern, but it really doesn't take long after, about that first week. And those deer, they get pushed into that nocturnal pattern or that heavily pressured pattern. We don't hunt huge tracts of land here. Most of our places that we're hunting are 20 acres, 30 acres. Maybe if you're lucky you get up over 100 acres. And so hunting pressure, it's not something that I can totally control. If the guys are hunting all around me and I'm not hunting, there's that deer's still getting pressure. So season started out slow, and I was hunting this deer's core, just the fringes of his core area. I kind of thought I had it figured out maybe where he was bedding, and had a feeling where I thought he was feeding and in kind of his feeding pattern, but I just couldn't get on that, and I was afraid that if I pushed into his core area too early and made a mistake, that I would push a ghost out of the area. So pretty much all of October goes by, and we were checking our covert cell cameras, and this deer's just not showing up. I'm not nervous really about it because I think he's a old enough, mature enough deer that he's really keeping a very small area of travel. A lot of does there, so even as the rut comes in for us down there, a lot of does. The bucks really don't even have to go far to chase those does, so he's keeping a really tight core area. And I kind of decided after that first couple days of October, the weather was kind of hot, I just stayed out, and I ended up going and filming some for my uncle and filming for a couple of other guys, taking my wife, filming for her a little bit. The worst case scenario is if I go in there, try to make a power play on this deer and end up pushing him out. So we get to the morning that I was able to harvest Farmhouse, and this is something that I've kind of picked up, more recently. Hopefully you take a little bit of what I'm talking about here. If you like it, use it. If you don't like it, that's what makes hunting fun, is we all have stories, we all have strategies, we all have things that have worked, things that haven't worked. But I'd kind of decided, in the past, I've been, playing the wind, and a lot of times early season I still play the wind, to put it at my advantage. But as I've kind of started studying more mature deer, studying their patterns, things like that, something that I've noticed is a lot of times the mature deer that were coming into our food plots and moving our cameras and stuff, those mature deer a lot of times will not approach that food plot when the wind is right for me. He's going to approach that food plot when the wind's right for him, or he's going to travel that corridor when the wind is right for him. So one of the biggest things that we use ozonics. It's one of those things that's come along and it's kind of changed the way I hunt. I wouldn't have dreamed even 5 years ago of going up and hunting to where I had deer coming in downwind of me, and the last 2 big mature deer that I've killed both of them coming in with my wind blowing to their nose. So ozonics is a big part of that. Black widow deer lures, I use, I change it up quite a bit, but this deer that you're about to see, I had 3 different lures out, and we just fooled his nose for sure with the mixture of that and the ozonics. So going into the hunt morning, I thought this deer was feeding in these beans down to the south of me, and then early morning I figured that he was coming from those beans back up the ravine I'm in and hitting the bedding area. So I'm in between feeding and bedding, but to get into there, that's a whole nother story. It's a lot of walking, and I feel like I got in there early enough to try to not spook deer out, and hopefully the deer are still feeding in those beans. The beans are on a property that I can't hunt, but I think they were the only beans within a huge radius of the property. The rain just killed the farmers. The crops were horrible there, and so I think that's his primary food source. When he's coming up the ravine to me, he's going to be downwind of me, but I've got everything in place to make this a successful hunt.
Morning, everybody. It's the 9th of November. We've had a massive temperature change here in the last couple of days. 21 degrees today. We had a nice encounter this morning right before camera light with a target deer that we've been after. He was out about 60 yards. Never spooked or anything, so we think he's still right here. So fingers crossed that he'll come back and check us out.
So the morning starts off really well for me. I've got my number 2 buck right at daybreak at 60 yards. And we're in my wheelhouse right there between November 8th, November 15th. That's been a really productive time frame for me. I've killed almost every deer that I've, big mature deer. It's always been in that wheelhouse. And so the morning's starting off great, but I get cute. I try to grunt at him, and this deer was clearly scared of something, because when I grunted, he shoots out of there like I shot him out of a cannon. So, it's early, and I'm still confident. So I began the day like that, and I thought, I'm in that time frame. I'm gonna rattle a little bit, and I'm gonna use the term tickle. I just kind of tickled the antlers together. It's just lightly, kind of like sparring. And the smaller bucks just start pouring in. It's just one after another, these smaller bucks, and I can tell that just by their demeanor and everything about them that time's right. So I decide at some point I'm gonna amp it up, and I just start crashing these horns together. And you know, I just thought, I've always heard people say, you know, the harder you hit them, the more they react. And so I'm crashing these things together and making all this noise, and it starts to work. So I'd left the camera running while I was rattling. Didn't even really realize it at the time. And I'd got a text message while I was sitting there rattling. So I pulled my phone out, I checked the text message, and it was from my uncle who was hunting, you know, a couple miles away. And he asked if I was seeing anything. I was telling him the action, whatever. And when I got off that, I just set the phone on my knee. And that morning we had just a little bit of rain, so the woods is pretty quiet. I hate hunting when it's like that because you don't hear a deer until they're right on top of you. But I also love hunting when it's like that because I think the deer move a lot better then. But set the phone down on my knee, and then mayhem starts. I look up, and 30 yards, there's Farmhouse. All bristled up, ears pinned back, going up the hill, right in front of me, to my left. And I'm kind of in shock. I can't even believe what's happening. And it all happened so quick. I spun the camera, hit record, only to find out that I had just shut the camera off. So I make the shot. I watched the deer. You know, I knew I hit him. Thought that I hit him good. He ran about 60 yards, and as I was watching him, I could see blood coming out of his mouth. I could see blood coming out of the side of his chest cavity. So I knew I had a good shot on him, but I wasn't sure where. And then I go back to review the footage, and devastation's not even the right word. It's, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but I'm so distraught that I did it again. And my heart kind of sank a little bit. So I decide, you know, not knowing where I hit him for sure, not seeing him fall, because as I watched him, he stood in one spot for probably 10 minutes and just stared through that bottom. So I'm thinking, you know, did I hit him high? Did I hit him back? Did I, you know, not get good penetration? And then I just didn't see him again. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on. When I stood up after the shot, I had actually dropped my phone into the creek, and you know, I'm sure it hit every rock on the way down the hill, and it just, so I get down, my phone's dead. I can't even call anybody, and I decided to just go ahead and pack my stuff up, and I'm gonna get out, and I'm gonna give this deer some time, and you know, make sure that he has time to expire. And so I go ahead and I head back to our hunting lodge there, telling the guys the story. Not even really sure at this time how big this deer is for sure, and we gave him, you know, 3-4 hours, and I decided, let's go back, let's look for blood, and let's just kind of see what the story looks like, you know, because I knew there was blood there. I'd already walked up to where I shot, and we decided to go back about 3 or 4 hours later. So Dad and I picked my dad up. Dad and I get there, and we lose blood. We had good blood, got to that point where I saw him stand there, and then we just lost blood right there for some reason. And I still can't explain, I can't explain to this day why we lost blood like that. But so I decide I'm gonna go down into that bottom, thinking that, you know, he was gonna basically come back from the way that he came in whenever I shot him. And so I'm down there and I'm doing circles and I'm trying to find something, and I think I wore Dad out trying to get him into the spot that I was hunting. You know, he's getting a little older, and so he sits down on a log. Lo and behold, he starts talking to his dad, which was my grandfather that we lost in 2018 And he starts talking to him, you know, praying a little bit, and looks up and there's 2 piles of blood in front of him. I can't explain that because we walked that area for I don't know how long, and I didn't see that blood before that. So, you know, Grandpa was looking out for me. So I come back, Dad's hollering. Come back, we start trailing blood again, and I lose blood again. My wife calls me, and I'm talking to her, and I'm pretty devastated because I'm starting to think that I've lost this deer. And you know, she told me she loved me. She told me, you know, it'd be all right. And I'm probably told her something like, yeah, right. Don't talk to me right now like that. Something, you know, something really loving. And no sooner than I hung the phone up with her, I looked up, and there he laid. And he'd only went maybe 100 yards from where I shot him, and we just couldn't see him where he was at. He was in some logs, and what a moment, you know, to get up there on a 160 class deer that you thought you lost literally 30 seconds ago. I went from the bottom low all the way to the high of highs, and in such a short span of time, it just, you know, it was an awesome feeling. God has blessed me with so much in my life, and He's really allowed me to harvest some nice deer, and without Him, none of this is possible. You know, more than anything, I love to be able to tell a story, from the summer work to the fall food plots and scouting. From the crisp days in November to that harsh weather we have here in December, I just love being able to tell a story. And this is my story of Farmhouse.